Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out this week's rant. Got 6 under my belt now. If they were beers, I'd be asleep already. Remember to click the thumbs up, leave a comment or a snide remark, tell me I'm full of shit, whatever. Oh, and please click the subscribe button. It'd mean a lot to me, and I can go tell Rachel I have 22 friends now. Maybe I can get up to 50 by the time she realizes how badly she settled. Israel's alignment with Christian fundamentalists here in the States continued on this week, with Israel continuing to kill Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, firebombing apartments and hospitals in Lebanon, and approving an additional 34 illegal settlements in the West Bank after killing Ali Majed Hamadneh in a town just north of Ramallah. Bet your last dollar Christian churches across America cheered it all on as part of God's plan. How did this alignment come to be, you ask? Three things: the destruction of an accepted baseline of educational competency, Christian illiteracy, and Zionists either giving up their belief in God or thinking Christians are stupid. Let's walk through it, and if you agree or not, tell me in the comments. I stumbled across this piece of information from the Public Religion Research Institute, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to conducting independent research at the intersection of religion, culture, and public policy. Let's take a look at the executive summary. Around 3 in 10 Americans qualify as Christian nationalism adherents or sympathizers. 1/3 of Americans qualify as Christian nationalism adherents or sympathizers, compared with 2/3 who qualify as skeptics or rejectors. These percentages have remained stable since PRRI first asked these questions in late 2022, with a slight decline among Americans who qualify as Christian nationalism rejectors, who peaked at 32% in June 2023 and declined to 26% by the end of 2020. I don't know what to make of the fact that people who are saying they reject Christian nationalism has actually gone down in that time period. That's a little disturbing. Let's read a little further on, shall we? White evangelical Protestants and Hispanic Protestants are most likely to hold Christian nationalist beliefs. Americans who frequently attend religious services, especially those who are white, are more likely to be Christian nationalists. White Christians, 46%, are more likely than Christians of color, 39%, non-Christians, 13%, and religiously unaffiliated Americans, 10%, to qualify as Christian nationalism adherents and sympathizers. White evangelical Protestants, 67%, and Hispanic Protestants, 54%, are the only major religious groups among whom a majority hold Christian nationalist beliefs. And then further, they say, the majority of those who attended religious services weekly or more qualify as Christian nationalism adherents or sympathizers at 54%, compared with 39% of those who attend at least a few times a year and 20% of those who seldom or never attend services. This correlation holds among those who pray outside of religious services and those who read religious texts. Let's remember these numbers. The Program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies defines 5 levels of literacy. Level 1 requires respondents to read brief text on familiar topics to locate a single piece of specific information. For example, folks at this level can read the hours on a store sign and tell you what time the store opens and closes, or understand that a prescription bottle saying to take 1 pill in the morning and another at night means to only take 1 pill each time they take them. Level 2 is defined as people who can make matches between the text and information and may require paraphrasing or low-level inferences. Some competing pieces of information may be present. People at this level can cycle through or integrate two or more pieces of information based on criteria, compare and contrast or reason about information requested in the question, navigate within digital text to access and identify information from various parts of a document. To put that in language that I can understand, these folks can read and understand their utility bill. They can identify things like a sliding payment scale and identify what measurement would result in them having to pay more for the utility. For example, let's say the water company decides that they're going to move to a sliding scale, and they've decided that the cost per gallon for water is going to be 5 cents if you use less than 100 gallons a week. Anything over 100 gallons a week, the rate goes up to 10 cents per gallon. At level 2, these people are going to be able to tell you why, when they used 100 gallons of water last month, their rate went up to 10 cents per gallon, as opposed to the month before where they only used 95 and only had to pay 5 cents. Level 3 is for folks who can process multiple pieces of information, some of which may contradict each other, and arrive at an answer. For example, think about going through the brochure for your health insurance and then being able to identify the services covered, whether or not your 23-year-old son can be on the plan with you, and how much both the individual and family deductibles are. People at this level are able to pull off those tasks. Now, before we pull up the corresponding map that PIAAC has so generously made available to us, I want to be crystal clear. Okay? Literacy is not a measure of intelligence. It's really a measurement of the state's ability to make sure people can understand and navigate the world intelligibly. And there are some states in this country that do not want their people to understand and navigate this world intelligibly. And we'll get to that at the end of this video. With that little caveat out of the way, let's look at the map. When you first open the map, it looks like an Ezra Klein wet dream. There's so many shades of blue. There's dark blues, there's light blues, and a few specks of an almost translucent sky blue that would make his heart go pitter-patter. But let's move away from the averages and take a closer look. Let's start by breaking this out by level 1. And let's move it over to the state, because I'm too old and ugly to worry about going county by county. So let's move through this. At level 1, in a state like Mississippi, 28% of the state is at a level 1 literacy rate according to PIAAC. And if we add in level 2 for the same state, it's 37%, which brings you to a total of 65% are at the level of a 1 or 2. Now let's move on to Mississippi, if I can find it. Missouri, where are you at, Mississippi? There you are. All right, so Mississippi have 37% of their people that are at a level 2. And if we look at level 1, they're at 28. So add it, 37 and 28, 65. Let's move on to North Dakota. North Dakota at level 1 is 13. And then if you add 2, it's 31. So they're at 44% of their population are at a level 1 or 2 according to the PIAAC. Alabama, let's go back south. It's getting cold. Alabama, level 2 is at 37%. But then if you move to level 1, it's at 24, which brings Alabama to a whopping 61% at level 1 or 2. Let's move on. West Virginia. West Virginia comes in at level 1 of 21%, just below the national average. But if you add in their level 2 folks, They're at 42%, 10% higher than the national average, which brings their total to 63%. So once again, West Virginia beat Alabama. And lastly, let's look at Louisiana as the last red state we'll look at. Louisiana at level 2, the state's estimate is 38%. But then if you add in the level 1, it's at 27%, which brings them to a whopping total of 65% of their people are at level 1 or 2 in the PIAAC ratings. Now, I don't want to seem like I'm picking on just, states that are red states, right? Let's move on. Let's look at a few other ones. Oregon, for example. Oregon comes in at level 1 of 17% and level 2 at 28%. So they're coming in at 45% of their population is at a level 1 or 2. If we look at Massachusetts, the most educated state in the nation, according to their brochures that they keep sending me, reminding me that I'm not allowed to go there on holidays like St. Patrick's Day. In Massachusetts, 29% of their population is at level 2. And if we look over at level 1 for that same state, where'd you go, Massachusetts? I lost you. You're up there next to Connecticut. 17%, right? So for Massachusetts, they've got 46% of their people with a literacy level of 1 or 2, right? These aren't great numbers for anyone, really. And then finally, let's look at Maryland, the weirdest shaped state in the country. All right, so with Maryland, when we look at level 1, let me get this right. When we look at level 1 for Maryland, we get 20%. They're 2 percentage points below the national average. But if we go to level 2 and look at Maryland, they're at 31. So they're right at the national average. So even in Maryland, 51%, a majority of their residents, would be rated at a level 1 or 2. None of these numbers are great, right? The numbers are a little inflated when you get to states like Mississippi, Alabama, West Virginia, and Louisiana. And they do come down a little bit when you get to states that we call blue states, right? Oregon, Massachusetts, Maryland. But they're not great numbers. We're still talking nearly half of the population. And in those first states that we looked at, we're talking 2/3 of the population. Okay, so we've covered literacy rates and looked at a bunch of red and blue states. Now let's go see what we can find out about Christian nationalists and bring this long, winding road to a close. And no, before you ask, I ain't going to turn to stalwart publications like The Nation or The Progressive or even Matt Bender. Instead, I'm going to check out what the Baptist Standard published not too long ago. So on March 1st, 2024, the Baptist Standard posted this article, which I find very interesting. And they're talking about a report that was released by the Public Religion Research Institute, which we talked about earlier, about public support for Christian nationalism as part of a broader survey of more than 22,000 adults nationwide. And then they also go in to further tell us that PPRI broke out 4 categories depending on how people responded to the questions. Those most supportive of the ideology, 10% of the country, were dubbed adherents, followed by sympathizers, who represent 20% of the country. That's 30% total. Those who disagreed with the statements were classified as skeptics, 37%, or rejectors, 30%. So, on that front, 67% rejecting, kind of skeptical of it, 30% saying, hell yeah, we're in. Numbers are still too high for me. Well, let's scroll down a little bit and look at what they found looking at Christian nationalism by state. Mississippi and North Dakota showed the highest levels of support for Christian nationalism, with adherents and sympathizers making up 50% of those states. They were followed by Alabama at 47%, West Virginia at 47%, Louisiana at 46%. Tennessee, which we didn't look at, came in at 45%. Kentucky, another state we didn't look at, also came in at 45%. Nebraska and Wyoming, all of those states came in at 45%. States exhibiting the least support for Christian nationalism were Oregon at 17%, Massachusetts at 18%, Maryland, New York coming in at 19%, New Jersey at 20%, and Washington at 20%. Adherents make up 12%, and sympathizers make up 22% of Texas. We scroll down a little further in here, and I'm going to quit reading screen by screen. Voting patterns in those states reflected the presence of Christian nationalist ideas as well. One of the big findings from the study was that residents of red states are significantly more likely than those in blue states to hold Christian nationalist beliefs. I wonder what happens if I put this map they gave us up against the other one we looked at. Let's take a look. So, support for Christian nationalism, level 1. Oh my God, the shading is just the same, isn't it? We go to level 2. Look at that, the shading gets a little darker. But there is a correlation. There definitely is. Hey folks, that's it for this week. Thank you again for coming and watching my rant. Click all the buttons, say hi, leave me a comment. And I thought this week we'd go out with a song that I heard over the weekend on WXPN that made me think this is probably what most of you are thinking about me at this moment. So enjoy.
If silence was golden, you couldn't raise a dime. Because your mind is on vacation and your mouth is working overtime. You quoting figures and dropping names. You telling stories and playing games. You over laughing when things ain't funny. You trying to sound like the big money. If talk was criminal, you'd lead a life of crime. Because your mind is on vacation and your mouth is working overtime.